Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is Daniel Roman here for winteriscoming.net, and I am so excited today to be speaking to Paul W.S. Anderson, the director of In the Lost Lands, coming out on March 7th. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing marvelous. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. So we cover a lot of George R. R. Martin specific stuff at the site, and so I'm really curious. He has like a vast catalog of stories. In the Lost Lands is a fairly obscure one, though. So I'm kind of
But a
curious,
really good one.
but a really good one. But can you walk me through like how you became aware of it, and decided to adapt this?
I was well. Firstly, the inception of the whole thing is really Mila. She's such a huge fantasy fan and a fan of George's. So she'd read all of George's work, like mass. She's a massive consumer of fantasy literature, which is good because George has a lot of literature. And so she was a massive fan of his. And about 7 years ago, she was approached by Konstantin Werner, this writer producer who had the rights to three of George's short stories. And that was it was very exciting for us. So Mila kind of like, clipped me over the back of the head, said, right, you get into this. This is exciting. Because it's George, he writes the most fabulous characters.
Yeah.
And B, also, HBO Max has really tried to kind of tie up George and be in monopolize the George R.R. Martin business. And we
Yeah.
were very much excited about kind of having an opportunity to explore one of George's worlds and extend the George R.R. Martin universe outside of Westeros. So, all of those things were very exciting for us. I had never really done a straight fantasy before.
Mm,
I've done a lot of science fiction and action. I've been on spaceships. I've been on ancient pyramids filled with aliens and predators,
yeah.
but something about a witch and a hunter that go looking for a werewolf, I'm like, that I haven't done. And also, Mila hasn't, she's never played a fantasy character like that. So she was super excited about Gray Alys, the witch,
Yeah.
because, she's played a lot of kind of man-made entities, the fifth element, constructed inside of a machine, Resident Evil, Alice, kind of a product of cloning and the T virus. So to play a truly magical creature was something that she was very excited about, and I was very excited about kind of bringing to the screen.
Oh, that's so cool. So you mentioned, obviously you've worked together on a lot of different stuff. You have a huge catalog of like big franchise sci-fi movies and stuff like that, like, Monster Hunter, Alien versus Predator, Resident Evil. Was there anything you learned on those more sci-fi leaning movies that was particularly helpful to you on this one, or that you had to do like differently to tackle this movie?
Well, my approach was very, very different on this film. I just come off Monster Hunter, which we shot all on location in the middle of, nowhere in South Africa and Namibia,
Yeah.
with the crew all living in tents in these kind of incredibly rugged and striking locations. And then I read George's short story and I'm like, well, how am I going to create the Lost Lands? What George has essentially written with the Lost Lands is an adult fairy tale, the message of which is be careful what you wish for. So how am I going to kind of bring this adult fairy tale to life? Because I've always loved fairy tales, and not the kind of Disneyfied version of a fairy tale, like the Little Mermaid. I love
Hmm.
the original Little Mermaid that Hans Christian Andersen wrote, where the Little Mermaid dies at the end. And I love the original Brothers Grimm, and I felt like this is George has kind of written this adult fairy tale. How am I going to do justice to it, and how am I going to bring it to life? How am I going to create a world that feels like a grown-up fairy tale, and also is different to what people would expect from something that George would write? I don't want to do Westeros again. I don't want to go to the wilds of Ireland and Iceland and shoot these landscapes because I feel like that's already been done. So really, it led me to creating this kind of graphic novel painterly inspired world that is in the Lost Lands. It's very much. I joke with George. It's kind of like it's the graphic novel that Hieronymus Bosch should have written. You know, it's got that kind of like medieval painting kind of feel to it, and and that's a very long way of answering your question. Now, how did my other movies inform it? I felt like I needed to make a completely different kind of film, and that's exactly what we did. We developed a technology where we could shoot against a blue screen in a studio so that we could create all these fantastical landscapes. But we had real time compositing, because we created all the landscapes first, which meant that the actors and the crew could see the landscapes that we were creating. So it kind of immersed them in a real world rather than just everyone standing in front of a blue screen going, oh, what's it going to look like? We'll know in 6 months' time.
Yeah. So did you shoot this on a volume or was it a different sort of
It
set?
wasn't a volume because for me, the problem, we looked at the volume, but the problem with the volume is you're very much locked into what you've already prepared.
Yeah.
You have to you have to build all the camera moves ahead of time and build the backgrounds to accommodate those camera moves, and that kind of really is really locks an actor into something that
Yeah.
they then can't kind of feel free to create on set. And that's where the magic happens for me, is when an actor kind of, you've got one idea of how a scene will go, but then Dave or Mila comes to you and goes, how about if I do it this way? And you go, oh my God, that's why these guys are great movie stars, because they come up with these ideas that I could never come up with. But you got to give them the freedom and the flexibility to do that, which I feel like the volume robs you of a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. I feel like, you've made quite a lot of movies. That strikes me as like a veteran director sort of thing to even think of, like to do it in that way, where that's where that magic is happening. So obviously, you and Mila have made quite a lot of movies together at this point. Huge fan of your work. My wife and I have been watching your films together for quite a long time. Is there anything about Mila's performance or work on this movie in particular that you're especially excited for fans to see, or that maybe stands out from your body of work together?
Well, I think the fact that she was so excited about playing a witch, playing
Yeah.
a magical character, playing a character that potentially has been alive for hundreds of years,
Mm,
and the loneliness that comes with that immense power. Seeing people kind of die around you, being compelled to grant wishes, but knowing that those wishes will probably twist and destroy the people that the wishes are granted for. It makes her a
mm,
very lonely character. She can't get close to people because the people she gets close to get destroyed. And then Dave's character is also an extremely lonely person. So it's these two exceptional people who kind of bond over their loneliness, and they go on this epic quest. But the quest is also kind of like a voyage of discovery for them, where they discover that they could actually be happy with this other person.
yeah.
So that was really the heart of the movie for me. And also, talking about Mila's performance, I've made a lot of movies where Mila is just the lead of the movie.
Yeah.
It's her name above the title. She's going to save everybody. She's going to save the world. This is very much a two-hander. And it's very much Mila and Dave going kind of head to head, sometimes with knives at each other's throats, and I feel like that's for me, that's a first. I haven't done that for a long time. I'd have to go back to a movie like Event Horizon, where I had Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Neill going head to head.
Yeah.
To that was the last time I did that, and this was very, very exciting for me to have these two powerful entities on set. And that's why we didn't go with the volume, because I wanted to give these two powerful entities their creative freedom.
Yeah.
Because Mila had her ideas, Dave had his ideas, but also you bring them together, you get a third perspective that is even more exciting.
Yeah. So this was your first time working with Dave Bautista, right? What was that like for you on set?
It was a dream. I mean, he's so collaborative. He's so nice. He reminds me of Mila a lot. It's nothing is too much trouble. He's really there for the movie.
Yeah.
He's not about his own ego and his how people perceive him. He's there to serve the film and serve the character. And that's, as a director, you can't ask for more from your actors.
Yeah. That's
So it
really
was a
cool.
dream. Listen, if I could make all the rest of my movies for the rest of my career with Mila and Dave, I'd be a happy director.
Well,
Well, make my life easy.
yeah, yeah. So let me ask you then. George R. R. Martin has said he had plans to write more Gray Alys stories that ultimately he never got around to getting on the page. are you hoping to do more movies in this series, or is this really a one-off in your mind?
We made it so that it's a very satisfying film. It's not like we end with "to be continued."
Sure.
We
Yeah.
deliver a very striking ending because George's short story had a very striking, surprising ending,
Hmm.
as you would expect from George. It's these dark characters that have dark secrets, and the twist at the end of Lost Lands, the story is amazing. It's why I one of the reasons why I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So it's a very satisfying cinematic experience as a one-off. Um, but would I like to spend more time with Gray Alys? Yeah. If George would like to, I would like to. That's for sure. So, we'll leave it in his hands. But, if he feels inspired, that's definitely something that I would like to pursue.
Cool. I will cross fingers, but I'm excited to see how the movie handles the ending from the short story. So that's it's good to hear that it is a striking
Oh, you
ending to
haven't
the
seen the
movie.
film yet?
I have not. I've read the story, but I
Ah,
have not seen the film yet.
well,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, it's one of the highlights of the film, where you get to the ending, you go, wait a second, what? It's
Cool.
great.
Awesome. Can't wait. So I'm gonna guess that the film has more action than the original short story did. When you're doing an adaptation of like a shorter work like this into a feature-length movie, how do you decide where to expand, where to add more action or things like character development while still staying true to the spirit of the original work?
Well, the original short story really only had action in in the very end of the story.
Yeah.
And it was terrific action. So it kind of suggested to me, well, these characters are capable of terrific action, so we could have more of it.
Mm,
And obviously, that was an obvious thing to kind of build out as we were expanding the short story. I think for me, the challenge was to get the balance between delivering an action movie and a character-based movie
yeah.
because the short story is all about the relationship between Boyce and Gray Alys. And that's why having Milla as a co-producer on the movie, because she produced it with me, was very, very helpful. It's the first time she's actually taken a producer credit on one of our films.
Oh, cool.
And she was very involved in developing the screenplay. And she actually, would clip me over the back of the head with the latest draft of the screenplay and go, "There's too much action. Where did the characters go?" And I go, "Okay, I'm going back to the characters." And her motivation always was, "We got to make George really, really happy." And she's like, "We know you can do great action. We just taking that for granted, but let's really deliver on these amazing characters that George has created." So that was really, her impetus, and that really helped me out a lot in the development process. And then
That's
also
awesome.
we would once we were happy with a draft of the script, we would send it to George for his comments as well.
Cool. That's awesome. All right. I think I've got time for one last question here. So what was your most memorable day on set working on this movie?
I think my most exciting day was when we started shooting the movie. The first
Mhm.
couple of days, we shot Dave's first action scene where he gets ambushed. And so it's very kind of Western gunslinger. I mean, it's great. It's great action. It's really good. He's got his two-headed snake. It's like it's great stuff. But I always knew that would be really cool. Then the third and fourth day, we shot the campfire scene with Mila and
Mm,
Dave, which is very quiet and it's an intimate character scene. And like I said, the short story is all about the relationship between Boyce and Alice. And from Mila's point of view, that was what the movie was about. And this was the first time that Mila and Dave were sharing screen time together. So, I felt like they'd have chemistry, but you never know until people are on set and the characters come to life. And that was wonderful because I'm like, oh my God, I'm into this movie. I'm into these characters. There's nothing happening. They're just lying there talking, but
yeah,
there is a lot happening. All of this character stuff, all these secrets that they're keeping from one another. It was very, very exciting to see that come to life. So for me, that was the best bit of the film.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Action bit, quiet bit. Paul, thank you so, so much for taking the time to talk today. Really appreciated it. So excited for you and the movie. Hope that people love it.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. In the Lost Lands, March 7th.